we're not really going to be doing Inside Tanya tonight, or for the next few weeks. You can have the Tanya in front of you. We're going to be starting what will hopefully be a 5-week series now, which will be a review of Prakim 35, Lamedei through Nun Gimel, 35 through 53. When we finished chapter 34, we did then a review of the first 34 Prakim. So now we will review the last 18 or so Prakim of Tanya.
You're not reading inside.
Maybe a line here or there, but no. In general, I will not be reading inside.
I'll leave it open to everyone's.
Okay. Tanya, as we know, is called Sefer Shel Beinanim. What is a Beinani? A Beinani is someone, as discussed in the first Prakim of Tanya, a Beinani is someone who has a neshama, a soul, that will always struggle. As opposed to a tzaddik is someone who has arrived at a point and reached at a point where he doesn't struggle anymore, because he's totally conquered and vanquished and overcome, overpowered, perhaps even transformed his egotistical, self-centered self. So what's fully dominant inside the tzaddik is the nefesh halikis, is the divine soul, and and therefore the tzaddik's entire desire is to serve Hashem. The tzaddik doesn't have to deal with laziness and with pettiness and with selfishness and with anger and with greed and with all these the whole beautiful package of emotions that the rest of us are blessed with. The tzaddik doesn't have to deal with them. The tzaddik has overcome them all. The tzaddik's life is sweet and beautiful and pure and holy, and the tzaddik wakes up in the morning and the only desire the tzaddik has is to serve Hashem and to daven and to learn and to help others. That's the life of the tzaddik. Then there's the rest of us, and we struggle. We struggle mightily. And the whole Tanya, the objective, the stated objective, the mission statement of Tanya, is to help those people who struggle, and to help them to be able to, even though that they struggle, and even though that they will never stop being strugglers, but still to help them in machshava, dibur, maisa, and thought, speech, and action, to be able to always do the right thing, and say the right thing, and think the right thing. That's the task of Tanya. And in the first 35 Prakim of Tanya, Dr. Rabbi does so. In order to be able to serve Hashem in machshava, dibur, maisa, so in the first Prakim of Tanya, Dr. Rabbi also explains that we need to have a certain level of bilvavcha. A certain level, we have to develop a certain level of avos Hashem. And in that, Dr. Rabbi talks about two different types and two different types of avos Hashem. There's an ava which the person creates through contemplating the greatness of Hashem, and then that's one path of arriving at avos Hashem. And the second path of arriving at avos Hashem is what Dr. Rabbi calls ava b'soteres, is tapping in to the hidden essential love which exists within every single yid. Those are two paths that Dr. Rabbi prescribes in the first chapters of Tanya. But let's be clear: the purpose of those two, of having avos Hashem, whether it's creating your own avos Hashem, or whether it's tapping into avos soteres, the purpose of the bilvavcha, as the pasuk says, is la'asoisei. The purpose of developing feelings for Hashem is in order to be able to allow a person to reach a place of la'asoisei, to be able to reach a place of actual machshava, dibur, maisa, doing that which is correct. So, in one sentence, in the first Prakim, the Alter Rebbe talks about how to be able to serve Hashem in machshava, dibur, maisa all the time, and the bilvavcha, the avos Hashem and yiras Hashem that are necessary in order to be able to get a person to a place of la'asoisei, to being able to do what's proper. That is the what. And now the Alter Rebbe is going to transition to the why. Dr. Rebbe starts off with a question and says, so you're telling me that the purpose of Avas Hashem, the purpose of the Bilvavcha, the purpose of all my feelings for Hashem is la'asoisoi, is in order to be able to do the right thing. Why in the world is la'asoisoi so important? Why is action so important? Why is it that beficha, that Moshe tells the Yidden, it's easy to do beficha v'vavcha, and he doesn't say v'la'asoisoi, which would mean to say in your heart, in your mouth and in your heart and in deed. No, in your mouth and your heart, la'asoisoi, and everything. The purpose of everything is deed. Why is deed? Why is action the most important thing? And as we've discussed many times, this is the opposite of the way it is in human relationships. In human relationships, the purpose of the heart is not to lead to deed. The primary part of a relationship are the emotions. The deed is there to express the emotions, but the deed is tafel. It's secondary to the emotions. What makes a relationship is not the deeds, but is the emotions. The deeds are there only to give expression to the emotions. And as we said many times, that if you're going to go and give flowers to your wife, which is a good idea, but if there is no feelings behind it, and if your wife senses that there's no feelings behind it, she won't value those flowers in any way, shape, or form. They're nothing to her. Yeah, okay, she might put them on the Shabbos table and decorate the table, but they have zero larger value than utilitarian. And when you give your wife a bouquet of flowers, yes, she's supposed to put it on the table for Shabbos, but it's much more than that. That's not really what it's about. Oh, here, by the way, I want you to have something to make the table look nice for Shabbos. There's something deeper there. And the reason why your wife appreciates it is because of the deeper. The main thing is the feelings. The actions are there only to express the feelings. But when it comes to Hashem, we say the opposite. What is the purpose of the feelings is la'asoisoi. The whole kavana, the purpose is the la'asoisoi, is the action. Why is the action the primary thing? That's question number one. Question number two, the Alter Rebbe says, as he begins Perek Lamed Hey, is we just learned about how most of us are condemned to struggle our entire lives. Now, the Rebbe says, why? Why did Hashem give us an nefesh habahamis with which we have to against which we have to struggle? Now, we can understand that we have to struggle. We can accept that. We can accept that life is not meant to be easy, and that we need to have some sort of challenges. And if there is no challenge, there is no struggle. Perhaps you could say that life itself loses its meaning. I get that. But why do I have to struggle against myself? No problem, I'll struggle. I'll struggle against other people. I'll struggle against outside negative influences. It's not that I'm lazy to struggle, but why did Hashem create me in such a way that a primary part of my identity always remains selfish and unholy, my nefesh habahamis? Why do I have to struggle against myself? Why can't I struggle against outside negative forces? So those are the two questions with which the Alter Rebbe begins Perek Lamed Hey. These are general questions. Question number one is, why is la'asoisoi? Why is action the main thing, the primary thing? And number two, why is it that we are condemned to a life of struggling against ourselves? As we pointed out when we originally learned this Perek, I said at the time that many years ago I bumped into an encyclopedia of religions. You remember that?
Yeah, sure.
And I was curious as to what they would say about Yiddishkeit. I opened up the book. It was written, I don't know, who would believe there are thousands of religions out there. It's like literally a book like this thick, Encyclopedia of the World's Religions. I guess the author was trying to find what is unique about every single religion. So in Yiddishkeit, what was the uniqueness that the author found, which I found to be profound? The uniqueness the author found, was Kugel. Kugel and Kreplach. Right. No, that wasn't. No. So, in other words, Kugel might be unique to Yiddishkeit, but the fact that different religions have foods that are traditional, unique foods, is not something which is unusual. What makes Yiddishkeit unique, according to this author, and he He makes a very good point. He says in every other religion that he studied, so the religion is based on certain theological and philosophical principles. And that is the essence of the religion, is the belief system and the value system. And any and all actions that the religion demands all flow from that value system or from that belief system. He says Yiddishkeit is the only religion where it's the opposite way. You look in the Torah, there are very few theological principles in the Torah. Very few values. It's basically about action. Do this, don't do that. Don't eat this, and then do that, and put up a mezuzah. And the theology and the philosophy of Yiddishkeit developed over the years, but the primary core of Yiddishkeit is a set of rules, which differentiates it from every other religion, wherein the rules are secondary. The rules flow from the philosophy. And that is this idea of la'asoisei. Why is Yiddishkeit la'asoisei? Why is it so action-based? And why are we meant to struggle? So to answer this question, these two questions, Dr. Rebbe says, first, we have to really understand the essence of what a mitzvah is and why we have to do mitzvahs. And he brings down, Dr. Rebbe brings down a Zohar, which we also discussed recently in the later Prakim and Tanya, where the Zohar says that every single one of us, we're like a candle. The fire, the flame of the candle is the Shekhinah, which is above our heads. The Shekhinah that resides upon us. The body, our body is the wick of the candle. But a wick and a flame isn't enough to make a candle. You also need fuel, you need oil. And what is the oil? So the Zohar says the oil are the mitzvahs. The mitzvahs that we do, they are the oil that keep the Shekhinah, the flame, burning brightly on the wick, which is our body. So Dr. Rebbe says, I don't understand this. Why do we need mitzvahs to keep us connected to the flame, to keep us connected to the Shekhinah? As we know, every single one of us, we have a neshama, a holy, beautiful neshama. Why does the neshama need mitzvahs in order to connect it to Hashem? Why can't the neshama connect to Hashem on its own, all by itself? Why does it need to have mitzvahs?
It's part of Hashem anyways, right? Why do you need to connect it with?
So why
Hashem?
So the Rebbe explains, the neshama, as holy as it is and as divine as it is, it's a mitzias. It's an identity. It has its own identity. It has its own desires. You know what its desires are? It desires to connect to Hashem. It desires to be one with Hashem. It loves Hashem. It fears Hashem. But all of these things that we just said define an identity. If the neshama didn't have an identity, it couldn't love Hashem. If a neshama didn't have an identity, it couldn't fear Hashem. In the words Dr. Rebbe uses, Yesh mi she'oihev and yesh mi she'yare. There's a yesh. There is something. There's a neshama that loves Hashem. There's a yesh. There's a neshama. There's something that fears Hashem. So while the neshama is very, very holy, it is not what we call batal b'mesiyas to Hashem. It is not completely lost in the identity of Hashem. It has a self-identity. And connection to Hashem comes only through absolute bittul. This is a general rule in Chassidus, which Dr. Rebbe introduced already earlier on in Perik Dalet and Hey of Tanya, which is that Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Sheira Ella B'Mashe Batal Elav Yisbarach. Where is there Hashras HaShechina? Where is the Shechina Sheira? Only in a place, in an area, in a time, in an act, which is entirely batal to him. So the neshama, on its own, the neshama as it is in the guf, which already has an identity, is not batal enough to be able to connect to Hashem. Yes?
I don't understand. Why is it that it must have bitul to have a connection? Can't the person have some connection, but it has to be bitul? He said completely bitul to Hashem. Like it sounds like a very
all or nothing.
All or nothing, or very strong.
It is all or nothing. And therefore, but before before you get too disconcerted by this, just hold on one moment.
I just want to understand.
And therefore, it's Tzaddik Gomer, who, as Alter Rebbe says, if you look on page Mem Dalet, 2 lines from the bottom, Afilu hu Tzaddik Gomer, even a Tzaddik Gomer, Eved Hashem, who serves Hashem, be'yira va'ava b'tanugim, with an incredible yira and an ava b'tanugim. Afal pikein eina b'teila b'mitzias l'gamri. It's not completely bottle. Libotl v'likavod, thereby to be able to be subsumed b'eir Hashem mamish, in the light of Hashem liyos la'achadim umyuchadim, to be able to be one and united b'yichud gomer in absolute unity with Hashem. Rak, rather, hu davar b'fnei atzmei, this tzaddik is something, an entity on its own. Yarei Hashem v'eyav, one who fears Hashem and loves Hashem. To make it a little clearer, what the Alter Rebbe isn't saying over here is that your love and fear of Hashem, the neshama's love and fear of Hashem, impede its ability to connect to don't allow it to, aren't tools that allow it to connect to Hashem. The Alter Rebbe is going deeper. They actually impede the neshama's connection. The love and the fear of the neshama impede its ability to connect to Hashem.
I thought that was the vehicle to connect to Hashem.
No, not at all. Because love and fear is mitzias. You cannot connect to Hashem through a mitzias.
Doesn't it say in Tanya, the two things, the love and the fear, are the wings that bring the
Make sure you come back next week.
Okay.
Okay? No, that's going to be a topic next week, and everything will become clear by then. But on its own, a person who sits and just experiences incredible, talk about a tzaddik, incredible love for Hashem, an incredible fear for Hashem, not only does that not get him any closer to Hashem, to the contrary, the love and the fear push him farther away from Hashem. Why? Because the love and the fear are an expression of the tzaddik's mitzias, of the tzaddik's ego, the tzaddik's identity. And you cannot connect to Hashem through ego. The only way to connect to Hashem is through bittul.
How did you do that? Everybody has.
As the Alter Rebbe even brings down in the Haggadah on the bottom of page 88, says that even in Atzilus, the Eir in Saf, it only is Sheira in the sphere of Chachma. Because what is Chachma? For those of you who have been here long enough, you know, Chachma is bittul. Koyach ma is the koyach of bittul. Chachma's receptivity. Everything from Chachma, after Chachma down, everything is about self. Chachma's receptivity to something higher. So the bad news is that no human being can connect to Hashem, because every human being is a mitzias. That's the bad news. But there's good news. The good news is that Hashem gave us 613 mitzvahs. And whenever we do a mitzvah, we are being absolutely batal to Hashem. We are doing Hashem's will. We are being subsumed in Hashem's will. And through a mitzvah, we are connected to Hashem, which is why the mitzvah is the oil, as explained, that connects the wick, which is our body, to the flame, which is the Shekhinah, because a mitzvah is absolute bittul. To explain this a little more, what we mean by that. You are a person, you have your own desires, you have your own identity. Even your neshama has its own identity and its desires, holy desires. But what is a mitzvah? Does a mitzvah have its own identity? Or is a mitzvah simply and purely an expression of Hashem's ratzon, Hashem's will? It's Hashem's will. That's all it is. It's the pnimius of haratzon of Hashem. The mitzvah, when you have a will to do something, all there is, a person's ratzon is an expression of me, what I want. My ratzon is not distinct from me. It's what I want. Mitzvahs are Hashem's ratzon. They're what Hashem wants. Mitzvahs are absolute bittul. So when you do a mitzvah, you're able to connect to Hashem. That's why we need mitzvahs. That's why it's not enough to be spiritual. It's not enough to be holy. All your spirituality and all your holiness will make you a very wonderful and spiritual and refined and holy human being. Not going to connect you to Hashem. Because to connect to Hashem, you need bittul. And bittul is only in mitzvahs. So the greatest gift that we ever received, we received by Matan Torah, we received 613 mitzvahs. These are 613 lifelines. As we know, the word mitzvah means The word mitzvah is related to the word savsa, which means connection. 613 ways in which we can connect to Hashem.
Avos Hashem is also a mitzvah, no?
Sorry?
Avos Hashem is also a mitzvah.
That's true. But there's a big chiddush from the Alter Rebbe and the Perek Mem in this area. Come to me after class and we'll talk about that. So that explains why we need to have mitzvahs. Still doesn't explain why we need to have action mitzvahs. Theoretically, I can do Hashem's will by having Avos Hashem, if that's the mitzvah. I can do Hashem's will by learning Torah or by davening, which they're not action-related mitzvahs. Why do we need to have action-related mitzvahs? So the Rebbe proceeds to explain in Perek Lamed Hey that once again, when I do a mitzvah, I have Hashras Hashchina on me, the flame, Hashras Hashchina. When I'm learning Torah, or when I'm davening, when I'm doing a non-action mitzvah, then that Hashras Hashchina is only on my neshama. When I do an action mitzvah, for the neshama to do an action, it needs the nefesh habahamis, because the neshama alone can't operate the body. The nefesh habahamis is also called the nefesh hachiyunis. It is the animating soul. It is in the blood. It is what gives you life and function and motion, etc. So every time you do a mitzvah, what's really happening is your nefesh habahamis is your nefesh alikis is hijacking your nefesh habahamis and getting your nefesh habahamis to do its bidding, what it wants. The nefesh habahamis can act on its own. It doesn't need the nefesh alikis. But the nefesh alikis, if it wants to move the hand, it wants to move the feet, it wants to do anything physical, if it wants to operate the body, it needs the agency of the nefesh habahamis. So when a person is doing a mitzvah, who is doing the mitzvah? The nefesh habahamis is doing the mitzvah. So the hashras hashchina is not only on the neshama, it's not only on the nefesh alikis, but you're actually making hashras hashchina also on your nefesh habahamis. Your body, your physical body, and your nefesh habahamis, as well as we'll soon see the physical objects with which you're doing the mitzvah, all of that now has hashras hashchina and becomes connected to Hashem.
It's achdut.
And achdus, yes.
That's it.
So we started off today's class asking two questions, and we've partially answered both of them. We asked why la'asoysay, why dafka do we need to have action mitzvahs, and the second question was why do I have to be fighting against myself? Why does the nefesh habahamis have to be part of who I am? And by now we know that when you do an action mitzvah through the nefesh habahamis, then you're actually bringing the Shechina and connecting Hashem and bringing down the Oir Ein Sof in your guf and in your nefesh habahamis also. So if I didn't have action mitzvahs, then we would never bring down the Oir Ein Sof into the physical domain, into the nefesh habahamis and the physical world. And also, if I was completely holy and I was struggling only against forces that were outside of me, then once again I would not be drawing down the Oir Ein Sof into klipa, into nefesh habahamis, which is klipa. But because the nefesh habahamis is part of my identity, and because the nefesh habahamis is involved in doing the mitzvahs, and because I'm doing mitzvahs with physical objects, therefore I'm bringing the Oir Ein Sof all the way into the guf, into nefesh habahamis, and into the physical world. So that answers mostly the two questions with which we began: why la'asoysay, why the action is so important, and also why it is that we are in a guf and a nefesh habahamis and we have to struggle against ourselves. But it doesn't fully answer the question, because we just explained that the reason why you have to have action mitzvahs in the nefesh habahamis is because we need to bring the Oir Ein Sof into the physical world and into the nefesh habahamis. Okay, you ever play the game with a child? Or you ever saw children playing a game and one will say why and the other will give an answer, but why, right? Every answer, but why? Okay, so we explained that the reason why you need to have action mitzvahs and why you need the nefesh habahamis involved is because We need to bring the Ein Sof into the Guf, into the Nefesh HaBahamis, into the physical world. But why? Why is that important? So again, we established the purpose of La Soisya. The reason we need to do action mitzvahs is to bring the Ein Sof into the Nefesh HaBahamis and into the Guf. But why? What's wrong? What's wrong if just my neshama connects to Hashem? Why does my Guf have to connect to Hashem? Why does my Nefesh HaBahamis have to connect to Hashem? Why does the watch have to connect to Hashem? Why is that even important? Why is all anything that's physical or material or klippa, why is that important? So that leads us into Perek Lamed Vav, which is, you could say, theologically, perhaps the most groundbreaking Perek of Tanya, definitely one of the most groundbreaking Perakim of Tanya, where the Alter Rebbe reframes the entire purpose of everything. And here's the Alter Rebbe introduces us to the concept of Dira B'Tachtoinim. This is chapter 36. And the Alter Rebbe turns everything on its head. And the Alter Rebbe explains that when Hashem created the world, so there are many, many, many worlds. And every single level, every single world is a level of Kedusha, a level of sensitivity to Hashem, a level of Gilui, a level of revelation. Our world is the lowest world. How do we know that our world is the lowest world? Maybe there's a world lower than us? The answer is, why can't it be? Because if every single world is revelation, in our world there's zero revelation. So you can't get lower than zero. What are you going to have? Negative revelation? If every single world, starting from the highest world, going all the way down, there's an incredible, intense revelation of godliness. And there in this world there's a little less sensitivity and less revelation. And then in our world there's blackness, that's all there is. You can't get blacker than black.
But what about when you see nature? Through nature you could see revelation of Hashem's glory.
That's your choice. That's not revealed.
It's not actualized.
It's not revealed. You're not forced to see it. In the higher worlds, it's not about. It's like when you look at this table over here. It's not. You don't have a choice whether to see that it's a table. I mean, you can choose to delude yourself and make yourself meshuga. When you look at it, you see a table. It's not like, what is it? And I'll say it's a table, and he'll say it's a chair, and he'll say it's an umbrella, and he'll say it's an elephant. Whoever's there sees there's a certain objective reality. You're looking at nature. One person looks at it and says Mother Nature. Another person looks at it and says Hashem. It's not a gili. You have the ability to make a choice to see through the facade. But this is a world where there's absolute blackness. There is no revealed. You don't look around. You have people who live their entire life. They look around here, they're there, they never see Hashem anywhere. And says the Alter Rebbe that you should know that of all the worlds, the Tachlis HaKavana is here. Tachlis HaKavana is our world. That everything that was created before us, that wasn't the Kavana. That wasn't the main thing. The main thing was our world. How do we know? Maybe the main thing is the world of Atzilus. How do we know that our world is the main world?
Why would that be
We were
important?
given the Torah, though.
What?
We were given the Torah. That was the purpose of the whole creation. So how could that not?
That's a very simple proof. That is true. And that stands. But the Alter Rebbe is going to say another point, because this other point sheds light on what we're talking about, which doesn't take away from what you're saying. Light isn't anything new. Because what is light after all? Light is an emanation from the source of light. In our instance, who is the source of light? The source of light is Hashem. There's light, there's revelation emanating from Hashem. Hashem is going to get excited about a revelation of Himself. That's what He wants. He created the world because of the revelation of Himself. There's nothing new there. There's nothing novel over there. There's only one thing that Hashem created that's new. And that's not light, but darkness. Light always existed. There was always Hashem and the Ein Sof. The one thing that Hashem introduced in creation was the idea of darkness, a place where He is not evident, and a place where He is not revealed. And the greatest darkness is in this world, which tells us that this is the ultimate world. The Tachlis HaKavan is in this world, because the purpose of creation was darkness, which is why Hashem keeps on going darker, 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 because that's the only chiddush. Oyer there always was, light there always was. The purpose is darkness. Hashem had a desire, what's called Dira B'Tachtoinim. He wanted a place that's dark, the darkest, a place where he's not felt, a place where he's not seen, a place where he's not evident and obvious. And in that place, we should reveal him, and he should be at home over here in this darkest of realms. And this is such a huge idea with so many implications. Whenever we see darkness, we know that's where the greater kavanah is. The greater the darkness, the greater the kavanah.
For example,
one example, there's so many. Even just to throw out a few things. Dr. Rebbe talks about how in the Beis HaMikdash is made out of doimim, stones. Because since in doimim there's the least revelation of anything, the tachlis hakavan is in the doimim. In a larger sense, Galus versus the times of the Beis HaMikdash. What is the greater avodah? In Galus or in the times of the Beis HaMikdash? Galus.
you have more to overcome.
Because they're more choshech, right? And Hashem wants a dira b'tachtoinim. In terms of in our own life, what gives Hashem nachas is when we transform the darkness in our life into light. So all those areas in our life, this topic that we've talked many times about, all those areas of darkness in our life, which we wish that we didn't have, but according to the doctrine of Dir B'Tachtoinim, that's where the kavanah is. Kavanah is that dark area should become light also, or at least either it should be transformed to light, or at the very least it should be, the darkness should be repressed. Yes?
Rabbi, what is the definition of the word kavanah? You said the kavanah is in the choshech.
The kavanah, the intention of Hashem in creating the world, is wherever he saw choshech, that's where the kavanah is.
What was the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash to begin with? If the main purpose was the choshech, why did we need the Beis HaMikdash to?
Because
it seems to be a tough one.
Because you need oyer in order to combat the choshech, and the oyer has to come first. That's a common. It's a common
but it's our job
recurring
to reveal
motif.
Our job is to reveal the R from the choshech. That's the job.
Let's put it in your daily life. To give you an example from daily life, to make it very practical. Every day, you wake up, you go to shul, you daven, and then you sit down and you learn a little. That's the oyer of your day. And then you go to work. That's the choshech of your day. What's the primary kavanah?
The choshech.
The choshech.
That's what you need the R for.
Because without the oyer, without davening and the learning in the morning, then the choshech would conquer you, and not vice versa. You need the oyer to fight the choshech. But the kavanah is the fighting the choshech. The fighting, the elevating, the transforming, and the suppressing of the choshech. Yes.
But it's a matter of perception. How's your davening?
It's not a matter of perception. If your davening is not oyer compared to your work, that's a problem.
Let's not perceive it.
Sorry?
What?
It's transforming the choshech to light.
There's two madrigas. There's one level is transforming the choshech, where sometimes we don't transform it, but we suppress it. That's called iskafia, when we subjugate the choshech. Like sometimes the character flaws within us, we don't transform them. But every single time we knock it down, that itself also has a tremendous... There's a sikha from the Rabbi, actually talks about Yisachar and Zvulun. Yisachar sat and learned Torah the whole day. Zvulun, they engage in commerce. What does the name Zvulun mean? Hapam? Yizbeleini Ishi. What does Yizbeleini Ishi mean? Leah said, when she gave birth to Zvulun, said, Hapam, now Yizbeleini Ishi. Now my husband, his primary residence will be by me. Lashon, the word Yizbeleini, Zvulun, so from the word Zvul. Zvul means, no, Zvul means a home, a residence. Zvul based Tifartenu.
Wow, Zvul.
Think about that, fascinating. When Yisachar was born, and he was the one who sat and learned Torah the whole day, she didn't say, now my husband's primary residence is going to be a Meni. When Zvulun was born, the Balaisek, the same thing is, when we want to use Beleni Ishi, you want to make a dir betachtoinu, you want to bring Hashem down here into this world, it's Zvulun, not Yisachar. And Yisachar's job is to enable Zvulun, in other words, the Yisachar part of Klal Yisrael, those who are, most of Yidden are Zvulun, not Yisachar. Historically speaking, Yidden went to work. There were always the people who were the Zvuluns, but their purpose was to inspire the Yisachars and to be the leaders, to help them to make sure that they can do their job. Because the main avodah is the avodah of Zvulun, which is the avodah in Tachtoinen. The darkness is always the Kavanah. So before we ask the question, okay, so through mitzvahs, we bring the Ein Sof into the physical world and into the Nefesh HaBahamis. Why is that so important? And now we have the answer. Why is that so important? Because that's why the world was created. That's why everything was created. Everything was created because Hashem wants a dira b'tachtoinim, in the lowest realm. The lowest realm means in the physical, in the material, in the guf, and in the Nefesh HaBahamis. And the only way to bring the Ein Sof into the physical world and the guf, the Nefesh HaBahamis, is through la'asoisoi, is through action mitzvahs. So we started off, now we have the full answer to the questions, now we have the full answer to the questions that we asked earlier, which is, we asked, why are action mitzvahs so important? And why was I created? That I have to struggle with part of me, which is a tachtoin. Why do I have to have this lowly part within me, against which I have to struggle my entire life? And now we know the answer to all of this. Why action mitzvahs? And why do I have to struggle against the Nefesh HaBahamis? Because the purpose of the creation of the world was not that the Ein Sof should reside and should rest on my Nefesh Alikis. The purpose of the creation of the world is Dafka Dira B'Tachtoinin, that Hashem wants to have a dwelling place in the Nefesh HaBahamis, in the Guf, in the physical world. And that's why, different than all other religions, Yiddishkeit is la'asoisoi, is about action. Every other religion, and some people who don't understand Yiddishkeit properly, to them, this world is a disgusting, ugly place which we're supposed to run away from, and it's not the Kavanah. And the whole point is to survive our experience in this world, to be able to go to the really good place. And what is that? That's Gan Eden. Because this world is a terrible, awful, evil place, but Gan Eden is where we're heading to. And if that's the case, then Taka, the Guf, the Nefesh HaBahamis, the physical world, all that are unnecessary, unimportant. Not only they're unimportant, they're impediments to my avodas Hashem. And in Yiddishkeit, it's the exact opposite. The Tachlis HaKavanah is Dafka over here in this world and making this world. And that's why, with Tchias HaMesim is such an important element of Yiddishkeit. Why do you have Tchias HaMesim? Think about it for a second. What's wrong with Gan Eden? What's wrong with the pleasure and the delights? If what they tell us is true, that the pleasure and delights in Gan Eden are so great and so unimaginable, and it is true, then why is Tchias HaMesim so important to the extent that it's one of the Yud Gimel Ikrei Emunah? And if we don't come alive again, and if we spend the rest of eternity in Gan Eden, Mara, what's the schlecht? You ever thought about that, Sasson?
No.
So why is that?
You know why we daven for Tchias HaMesim? Why do we daven for Tchias HaMesim? Because we have parents and grandparents passed. We want to see them again. But what's wrong if we join them?
Yeah.
What's wrong if we join them? Then everyone's happy. Why do you have to schlep them back down over here? In the Elam Haza, in a world where you have to eat and you have to drink and you have to sleep and you have all these, the Neshama in Gan Eden is...
You can see them in Gan Eden too. You don't have to...
Exactly my point. Yeah. Exactly my point.
But it's not good in Gan Eden.
Why do you have to schlep Avram Avinu, who was busy enjoying himself in Gan Eden for 4,000 years, and suddenly, boom, you come back into a body with with bodily function and with all the needs and everything.
In this world,
yeah.
or in Gan Eden?
I don't understand your question.
You said Tchias HaMesim will be in this world.
It is, that we know. What for? But if we understand that the Tachlis HaKavanah is Tafkin Eilam Hazeh Gashmi, Hashem wants the Ein Sof to be revealed over here. We have to make this world into a holy place. It's everything is about here. Gan Eden, it's not, this world isn't for Gan Eden. Gan Eden is for this world.
So why is our lives temporary here?
They're temporary now, but when Mashiach comes, they'll be permanent.
So what is the purpose? Well,
The purpose of Gan Eden?
of the other worlds, if this is our permanent residence, ultimately.
Correct. Purpose of the other worlds, we'll find out.
What do you mean? We'll find out.
We'll find out next week.
Oh, really? Let's come back.
No, yeah, it's a good question. In other words, if the was this world, why do you have to have the other worlds? That we'll find out Mir Hashem next week. Next week.
next week.
So that's Perek Lamed Vav. In Perek Lamed Vav, the Alter Rebbe introduces this idea again of Dir B'Tachtonim, which I know what we did now was a drive-by shooting on it. In other words, that we didn't fully address it comprehensively. For those who want to have a more, I believe we give a few classes on it. It's if you go onto balshamtovlibrary.com, and we spoke. There are so many implications. It's a worldview which is the opposite of what everyone is used to thinking. It's a tremendous chiddush, the idea of Dir B'Tachtonim. We're not right now. We're doing a review, so we're not going into in depth. But if you want, you can go back to those shiurim. It's an incredible idea. This idea of Dir B'Tachtonim, which really revolutionizes the way everything is viewed. So that's what we're working towards. We're working towards this Dir B'Tachtonim, that's what Mashiach is all about. Which is why Mashiach is so fundamental to Yiddishkeit. Gan Eden isn't fundamental to Yiddishkeit. When I say it's not fundamental, it's true, but it's not one of the Ikrei Amunah. Mashiach is fundamental to Yiddishkeit. If there is no Mashiach, there is no Yiddishkeit. That's what an Iker means. When you talk about Ikrei Amunah, if there is no Iker, the foundation isn't there, the whole building collapses. Because the whole purpose, our whole job, is to bring Dir B'Tachtonim, which is Mashiach. And the example that we gave back then, imagine if you're a soldier in battle, and someone asks you, what are you doing? He says, I don't know, I have a job to go shoot a gun and to run this place and that place. And you say, do you want to win the war? I don't care, win, lose. I have a job to shoot a gun. Imagine a soldier like that. Imagine that's the same thing. Yid says, what do I know? Mashiach, yeah, no, I have a job to do Torah mitzvahs. What do you mean you have a job? The whole purpose of all Torah and all mitzvahs is to bring Mashiach. It's like imagine you hire a person to do construction on your house. And you ask him, do you plan on finishing the job sometime soon? He says, I don't know. Let's make a difference. Today I'm putting up this plank. That's my job. Will I ever finish? I don't know. I don't care if I finish. That's not my point. My point is today I have to put up this plank. The whole Yiddishkeit is about bringing about this idea of Dir B'Tachtonim. Now, Perek Lamed Zayin, which is a fascinating Perek, the Alter Rebbe actually gives us the whole system of Dir B'Tachtonim and the way it works. Because we have to make this entire world into Dir B'Tachtonim. How do we make the whole world into Dir B'Tachtonim? Every element of the world, regardless of where it may be, how do we make it into Dir B'Tachtonim? So it's a system. The Alter Rebbe says, first of all, you should know that when you do a mitzvah, obviously, so you're making your nefesh abahamis, which is klipa, right? You're transforming that, and you're bringing the Eir and Safat your nefesh abahamis. And also with whichever object you happen to be doing the mitzvah, whether it's doimim, whether it's semeach, whether it's chai, and he gives examples from each one. He gives the doimim if you give money to tzedakah. Semeach is if esrog that you use. Chai is if you take a parchment, the hide of an animal, and you use it for sefer Torah, tefillin, mezuzah. Whatever object you're doing a mitzvah with, you're bringing the Eir and Sof into that object too. So when you do a mitzvah, you're first and foremost, you're elevating the medaber, which is your nefesh habahamis, and also any object with which you are doing the mitzvah also, you're elevating it, you're bringing the Eir and Sof into that object also. That's beautiful, that's wonderful. But if we go along that path, we're not elevating the entire world. Think about it. What percentage of objects in this world are directly used for doing mitzvahs?
Very little.
Percentage. What percentage would you say?
Less than a percentage.
Less than 0.0001%, right? There are a billion people in China. So let's just put it that way. And how are we elevating China? So Alter Rebbe here now then introduces
They're using products that they produce,
and therefore
we're benefiting.
we use it for what?
We can use it
The
for
mitzvahs.
mitzvahs. We can use it to.
But how many of the products do we use for mitzvahs? Let's be honest.
100%.
100% of the products. 100% of the products that come from China are used for mitzvahs.
I can use it for mitzvah.
You could. But could is not enough. If you're going to wait for the could, we need a world that's fully elevated.
So let's say somebody has a store where he sells products that come from China. He's mefarnis from that stuff, from that merchandise. So that elevates the merchandise as well.
So the Alter Rebbe, let's put it in a little more systematic way. There are 600,000 root neshamas. Every one of those neshamas further subdivides into 600,000. So that's, 3.4 trillion neshamas. We're talking about the neshamas of all the generations. Bishvili nivra ha'olam, and Bishvili Yisrael nivra ha'olam. The whole world was created for Klal Yisrael. Beis Reishis, right? The world was created for Klal Yisrael and for Torah, which means that the whole world was created so that a Yid can go and do Torah and mitzvahs. And because Hashem is a master craftsman, so imagine like you have a person who builds a house for themselves, and afterwards you tour the house and you say, okay, I'll talk about a person that builds a home, and what's this room for? I don't know, it doesn't have any function, it was by mistake it was put in this room. And what's the purpose of this wall? No purpose. Just, the builders just stuck it in this wall. And there's no such thing. When you build a home, every single part of your home has a function, has a purpose. So therefore, if Hashem creates the world, and the world is for B'shvil Yisrael, B'shvil HaTorah, then by definition it doesn't mean just that the world as a whole was created for the Yidden, but that means that every single element, there can't be something in the world that wasn't created to help a Yid, because it wouldn't have been created otherwise. What's it for? So therefore, what you have is this world is essentially divided into 600,000 parts, or 600,000 times 600,000. When I say I don't mean necessarily equal parts, but I mean is that every single thing that Hashem created has a purpose. And the purpose is to help a certain Yid learn Torah or do mitzvahs. Otherwise it would not exist. If I sit and I learn Torah do mitzvahs, what I do is automatically I elevate my nefesh habahamis. I bring the Eir and Saf onto my nefesh habahamis. But my nefesh habahamis has a support system. Meaning my nefesh habahamis can't survive. My nefesh halikis is immortal. My nefesh habahamis in order for it to survive, it needs food, it needs drink, it needs clothing, it needs a house, it needs whatever other amenities, it needs soap and shampoo, whatever else my nefesh habahamis needs.
But you don't need the whole world.
When I elevate my nefesh habahamis, the entire support system of my nefesh habahamis, all those klipas noiga elements of this world, which supported my nefesh habahamis and allowed it then to do a mitzvah and to be elevated, they also become elevated. So when I sit here in Brooklyn and I do a mitzvah and I elevate my nefesh habahamis, I am having a global impact. And this is definitely so much more understood today, more so than it was 300 years ago, when pretty much everything that I used would be local. Everything, you could say everything I ate or used, or almost 99% of the things came from within a 100-mile radius of me. But today, just look at right now. Where's the suit come from? China. All the elements of it. I once saw somewhere something fascinating. There's no one today who knows how to make a pencil. It's like a famous theory. No one knows how to make a pencil. Why? You go buy a pencil for $1 or whatever. Actually, you can buy probably a dozen pencils for $1. But what's in a pencil? You have the wood, you have the lead, you have the eraser, you have the metal, right? And these are all made in different factories, all right? It's not one factory where they're made. They're all different. So when you're using a pencil to write some Chidushei Torah, you're elevating one factory in
Taiwan.
in Darton, in Taiwan, and another factory in Darton, right? So I'm here and I'm elevating something in Argentina and something in Brazil and something in London, and I'm sitting here in Brooklyn and I'm connecting to all those places and elevating all those places. Every single Yid has an entire support system, and every Yid, and that's why me and you and you and you are so important. Every single one of us. It's not just that in order to bring Mashiach we need 20 million mitzvahs. So then I could say, okay, so you know what, I'm not going to do the mitzvahs. Why? Reuven, I'm putting you in charge of my mitzvahs. I'm too lazy to do my mitzvahs. So let's say I was supposed to do 100 mitzvahs. I need you to do, and you're supposed to do 100. I want you to do 200. Be me moitzi. You're fine with that? Why doesn't that work? Because it's not about a quantity. It's the understanding that every single one of us has a part of the world that we have to elevate. And no one else can elevate it because that part of the world was created for me. I have to elevate that part. And you know what? If I'm not going to elevate that part, I'm going to have to come back in another Gilgul to elevate it. Because it has to happen. A Mashiach has to come. And the whole world has to become a Dir B'Tachtonim. And all the billion people in China and all their factories, they're all busy creating things or part of a support system. So for example, the person who runs a hot dog stand somewhere in the middle of a desert place in China, that person is there to provide the hot dog for the worker who's making the button for my suit. And ultimately, when I do a mitzvah, that hot dog stand also becomes elevated. Because you have to understand, why did Hashem create a hot dog stand in the middle of China? It has to be for a Yid or it wouldn't exist. And that you could be me, could be you, could be you. So, what we have over here is that when all the Yid, when every single Yid does their mitzvahs that they had, elevate their nefesh chayunis, so when you do it, first of all, you impact, and you get the actual objects of mitzvahs. And by the way, it's not only objects of mitzvahs. We spoke about flowers for Shabbos, right? When you buy flowers for Shabbos, that object is elevated because it's becoming part of Einik Shabbos, the mitzvah of Kedusha Shabbos. So whether it's flowers for Shabbos or whether it's a Sefer Torah, it's filling money for tzedakah, there's the objects which become the mitzvah themselves. And then even the objects that don't become the mitzvah, the rest of the world, they become elevated, because when all 600,000 neshamas and all their roots, all of them elevate their nefesh chayunos, and everyone will, because every yid is ultimately does their avodah, then we elevate the entire world, a whole klippas noiga of this world. And as Alter Rebbe says, once klippas noiga is elevated, so giving klippas hatmeis automatically that cuts off its lifeline, and it has no energy left at all. So there's a whole system of Dir B'Tachtonim, and a whole system of Dir B'Tachtonim relies on mitzvahs ma'asiyos, because to impact the deed, and it relies on the fact also that we're utilizing our nefesh habahamis. Think about this for a second. If you only had a nefesh alikis, let's say your body only had a nefesh alikis, and was able to do mitzvahs, so you'd be able to impact the items, the mitzvahs, the physical objects you did, but you wouldn't be able to impact the place in China. It's only because you have an nefesh habahamis, which requires food and drink and all that stuff. So we ask the question, why do we have to have an nefesh habahamis? The nefesh habahamis is indispensable for Dir B'Tachtonim. The nefesh habahamis, when you bring Eir and Saf in it, the nefesh habahamis itself is a tachtoina being elevated, and through the nefesh habahamis, we're elevating the entire world. The Rebbe continues and says that this is why of all the mitzvahs, tzedakah is considered the greatest mitzvah. Because if every mitzvah is about elevating the energy of this world, the unholy energy. When I say unholy, I don't mean bad, but the energy, mundane energy of this world, and drawing down the air and stuff into it, there's nothing that has more energy in it than a dollar bill.
In God we trust.
Think about it. What goes into a dollar bill?
Money talks, everything else walks.
That's the power. I'm not talking about the power. I'm not talking about the buying power. What goes into a dollar bill? How much effort and energy do you invest into making your paycheck?
Yeah, go to work.
You put your everything into it. Every mitzvah that you do, you put a little energy into. And then there's one mitzvah that's not a little energy. The entirety of your being is invested in the money that you make. And when you take a nickel, a quarter, a dollar of that, and you give it to tzedakah, and you bring the Eir Saf into that dollar, what you are doing is you're bringing the Eir Saf into the workplace, into your mind, your heart, your arms, everything that went into making the money now becomes elevated to Hashem. So in terms of the ability to be able to make a dir b'tachtoina, bringing Hashem down here into our mundane, everyday activities and life, there is no mitzvah that has the power to do that as the tzedakah, which is why Chazal tell us, G'doyla tzedakah shemikareves ha'geula. Tzedakah is great because it brings the geula, because what it accomplishes, one small amount of tzedakah accomplishes from that perspective, more than any other mitzvah that a person does. When you do a mitzvah, so it's limited. You do a mitzvah for 5 minutes, so you elevated those 5 minutes, and you elevated the energies and the faculties and powers you invested in that mitzvah. You give tzedakah, you just elevated your last month, and every single faculty and energy that went into making that money, which is pretty much the entirety of your being.
And the money's being used for mitzvahs also. That's also elevating.
That's true. But it's not the same level of dedication as in tzedakah. Now, that's Perek Lamed Hey through Lamed Zayin. And next week we're going to make almost like a U-turn, and we're going to start talking about the Maila of Kavana and Ava and Yira and the function that it has. Yes, Hashem next week.
Thank you.